How do you jump in between storyboarding for preschools, action shows, and feature films? Today's video focuses on what I think is probably the most important skill that any storyboard artist or storyboard revisionist needs to develop and improve, especially if they never want to be out of work. If you're new to the channel, my name is Camilo Klauser. I'm a storyboard artist in the animation industry, and I'm here documenting and sharing my journey as a storyteller as well as other people's journey through videos and interviews. So remember to subscribe if you want to watch more videos like this, and click the bell to be notified when a new episode is posted. Let's start with some context. Other than storyboarding, I had the privilege of being a storyboard supervisor in the past, and more recently, an assistant director. And what I soon realized that even artists that are considered veterans but that had most of their experience in one kind of show might have harder time to excel in a different genre. So why is it that some people that work in feature films might have a hard time working in preschool, or artists who work on preschool struggles when boarding for action shows? It's all about cinematic language. You see, storyboarding is like speaking. You might be incredibly fluent in your mother tongue, but the only issue is that there are so many other languages that one can speak. And the same is true for storyboarding. If you spend your whole life speaking one cinematic language, you probably have a harder time when you start trying and speaking a different one. And even if you were pretty good at speaking 2 or 3 languages, the moment you stop practicing them, you start to forget them. And I intentionally use the word cinematic language, not camera language, because it's not just about how you frame or compose your shot. It's also about your choices in acting, for example. A show like Family Guy is a lot more limited in its gesture compared to an action show like The Last Airbender. And your boards need to reflect the strength and limitation of the cinematic language you're required to use. The only way to be fluent in multiple languages is by practicing and keeping your skills sharp. Which brings me to the non-sponsor of this video, which is myself. About a year ago, I created a series of storyboard notebooks for myself that I use to thumbnail for work, sketching outside, and related to the topic of this video, keeping my skills sharp by doing film studies. I didn't really advertise it at the time, but a few friends saw pictures on Instagram and asked where I got them. So now I'm sharing them with you as well. There's a link down below in the description if you want to grab one for yourself, and they're available on most Amazon websites around the world. Check the link down below. I created 3 formats in the 3 most common aspect ratios used nowadays. I personally love them, of course, and they are inspired by the vertical layout of Ghibli storyboard books. And they have an index at the beginning of each notebook so that you can jot down where each project or film study starts, and a few pages at the end to write down any note that comes to mind while working. So coming back to the main topic of this video, what is this skill that you can develop and that will make you a versatile story artist? I think it's the ability to dissect a cinematic language and be able to understand what the language of the film or show you're working on is, and then being able to speak it fluently for the time you're working on it. If you can master the skill, I promise that you will never be out of work. And you will have the flexibility of moving from preschool to comedy, from 2D animation to dynamic 3D animation shows, to feature films, to commercials, and to music videos. And this applies to senior story artists as well as first-time storyboard revisionists. Before I tell you how to improve this skill, I want to help you understand what I'm talking about by giving you some examples. Let's start from a show I work on, which is season 5 of Bubble Guppies. Very cute, charming preschool show for Nickelodeon, and the cinematic language here is the one of a stage play. That's because at the beginning of each episode we are in a kindergarten setting, and the rest of the episode is nothing more than characters playing make-believe. For these reasons, you never have extreme perspective, but you tend to have the camera staying outside of the story and see the character flap on the screen. The kids in the audience are watching the story unfold in front of them, and the characters are just playing it for them. That is very different from a 2D show for older kids like Carmen Sandiego. Kids who watch the show are part of it, and the goal is to make them live the story as if they are in it. If you try to storyboard this by placing the camera outside of the story, it wouldn't be appropriate with the language of the show. Storyboarding on any project also means that you need to understand what the limits are. For example, in most 2D shows, you are required to avoid camera tracking with a character or a vehicle if the perspective has a vanishing point visible on screen. That's because it's more expensive and complicated to achieve that kind of animation. You can, however, lower the camera, move it on the side, keeping the vanishing point off screen and achieving a similar result. It's a different story if you work on a 3D show, as you don't have the same kind of limitations. But depending on the budget, you might be asked to avoid other things, like showing the contact of feet on the ground, if not strictly necessary, as this takes longer to animate properly compared to frame the character waist up. Or again, I work on 3D shows where I got a set limit of camera moves per episode, or a limit on the number of characters that I could show on screen at the same time. By the way, if you're finding the video interesting so far, please leave a like as it helps showing the video to more people like you, and leave a comment with the limitation you face on production or any question you might have. So how do you learn this skill? The only ways you can become proficient at understanding and implementing different camera languages are observation, practice, and learning from others. A lot of artists believe that the only way to improve is by drawing a lot. But I somewhat disagree with this statement. Sometimes you can improve a lot just by watching and dissecting films in your mind. I did it a lot in college, and my composition improved exponentially without drawing 10,000 frames. I just watched a sequence and imagined a grid that would divide the shot into thirds. And if you're wondering what I mean by thirds, I actually have a video about composition that will explain it. I'll leave a link in the description. So take a sequence you like and watch it. Then re-watch it and ask yourself, why do I like this scene so much? Why did they film it with this composition? Try and look at the shots and how they are divided into thirds, and how those thirds related to the previous or next shot. Ask yourself, is this object in the same screen position as the other object in the next shot? If so, why is that? If not, why not? To give you an idea, I will give you a glimpse of how I would study a scene from The Departed. This is the last shot before we cut to the scene I want to analyze. When I look at the image on screen, I imagine a grid like this. Here, I notice how our attention is driven to the center of this composition. I make a note to myself of how Scorsese and his editor Thelma Schoonmaker are using an L-cut with the audio to connect the two scenes.
My word against you.
Do you hear how the dialogue carried over to this new shot? You want to pay attention to these intentional choices they make. Now we're cutting to a new location, but the glass is still in the general area where our eyes were looking. We pan up and DiCaprio is on screen right of this composition. There is an empty space on screen left, and we hear women voices off screen. As we cut, we discover who these voices belong to. The two women are occupying the empty space from the previous shot composition. I'm keeping notes in my head of all these choices. I also notice how the woman does a double take, and we don't know why. Is she looking at DiCaprio or is there something else? Another mental note. We could have revealed a character without this shot, but the reaction of the woman conveys how the character that is about to be introduced is perceived by the world around him. Scorsese uses a slow pan to build tension to the reveal. We first see DiCaprio looking at the women, and then someone behind him. Notice that this composition is not perfectly balanced. DiCaprio is slightly squished against the side of the screen while Nicholson sits comfortably in his third of the screen. And this is how we are introduced to Jack Nicholson's character, the mob boss. This is what I mean by studying without drawing. I would then keep mental notes of how they play here with their glances before Nicholson speaks, and they actually make eye contact. But this could be the content of a completely different video. Let me know in the comments if you're interested in a video like that. Observing and analyzing without drawing a single line is a brain exercise that will develop your ability to dissect a visual language way faster than by drawing. If you were a runner, these will be your sprints. The second way you can improve your ability to dissect the language using a film or a show is by practicing. Take your storyboard notebook or a piece of paper and reverse board the sequence. That will force you to recognize the director choices even more, and it will set this lesson in your mind. This method takes more time, but it also gives you a deeper understanding of the film language and visual choices made by the filmmaker. If you were a runner, these will be the equivalent of a long run. You are developing resistance now. The final thing you can do to sharpen this skill is to learn from others. YouTube channels like Every Frame of Painting, the Cinematic Cartography, or the Royal Ocean Film Society are gold mines of lessons on filmmaking and cinematic language. Going back to the runner metaphor, this is as if you went up to a coach or other runners and listened to how they approach running and why. Once you develop this skill and learn how to decipher the visual languages of most films, you will have no problem working on any production and understanding its needs. At least I found that to be true in my experience. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to support the channel, and until next time.